And then, perfect. And let's start letting everybody in. Cool. Perfect. I think we are just about ready to rock.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome, everybody who's joining.
How is everybody feeling this fine morning, afternoon, depending where everybody's connecting in from? Drop in the comments where you're connecting in from and how many inches or feet of snow you have outside the window.
Nothing in Atlanta. How lucky is that? Oh, Toronto has been so cold.
Sunny
out. The California and Florida people, not fair. I have 12 inches outside my house. So
New York City really got almost a foot of snow. Wow.
Yeah, it kept my toddler care, my mom visiting. They canceled her flight and she ended up sticking around for 2 more days with us, which is always lovely to have an extra set of hands. So I took it as a nice win.
Yeah.
The upside.
Take the help when you can get it.
Okay, so I think that we're ready to go ahead and get started. It's a couple minutes after 1, so folks are still joining us. Welcome, welcome. But let's get this show on the road. So my name is Brandy Murch. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing at Threshold Brands. I'm happy to host this panel for everybody. I'm excited to see everyone here. This is the first CMO Peer Talks of 2026, and there is so much to talk about in terms of digital marketing space in general. It's everything changes by the day, so it's a really awesome experience, I think, for everybody to get together and share our knowledge. So I'm really excited to host this, and I'm together with Jessica Serrano and Ashley Mitchell, and today we are going to really focus on multi-location marketing. So, and the trends that we're seeing for this year. So, Jessica, I'd like to toss it over to you for a little bit of introduction.
Great. Hi, everyone. Jessica Serrano. I'm the CMO of Bagel Brands, which comprises of 4 brands across the U.S. You might know us most notably for Einstein Brothers, but we also have Noah's in California, Manhattan Bagels on the East Coast, and Brugger's Bagels as well. I am based in Denver, so it was cold this weekend, but sun's out and mostly melted the snow. Excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Fun fact, Jessica, Brugger's was my very first job as a teenager.
I love that.
That holds a special place in my heart, and we actually don't have many around us. We might have one and it's not close, and whenever I travel, it is one of the places that I always look out for because they're so good.
I love that.
Ashley, I'm going to toss it over to you. Give us the group a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Ashley Mitchell. I'm based in Pennsylvania, so I have about 12 inches of snow, and it's not getting any warmer, so it's not melting. I think it's going to be the high of 17 degrees all week, and we might get a nor'easter this weekend and get more. So we'll see how that goes. But outside of that, I've spent my entire career in marketing communications roles. I started in franchising when I fell into it, as most people do, in 2014 after about 6 or 7 year stint with the Walt Disney Company. My franchise experience spans consumer marketing, franchise development, mergers and acquisitions, both being acquired and on the acquiring acquisition side, working with private equity firms on the brand side. I was also a fractional CMO with a handful of brands in a variety of industries, including youth enrichment, beauty concepts, home services, food and beverage, and B2B services. I currently sit in a few different seats, but today we're going to talk about marketing for East Coast Wings and Grill. So we are a full service casual dining concept based in North Carolina. And so we're a regional lifestyle brand with locations currently open in 5 different states.
Awesome. Thanks for that. A little bit background on myself. Like I said, VP of Digital Marketing at Threshold Brands. We are home services. We are also in the private equity space. We have 10 home services brands that stretch across the United States and Canada. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. For here, I'm going to toss it over to Alex.
Brandy, thank you so much. 60 seconds of everybody's attention. A big hello from sunny but slightly frozen Wilmington, North Carolina. No snow, so I did luck out this year. My son probably did not, because it would have been nice for him to probably have a few inches. But Brandy, thank you so much for the 60 seconds of attention. Before we kickstart with today's agenda, quick introduction to myself. My name is Alex. I'm the local marketing consultant with Promo Republic. Been in franchising now for 6 years. Outside of work, I'm a dad to one little toddler. We're almost three. Big traveler, foodie, mountain bike enthusiast, and scuba diving, though that kind of gear is now collecting a lot of dust with a 3-year-old on hand. A little bit of background context about who Promo Republic is if it's the first time hearing that name. As of today, we currently support a little bit over 110 franchise brands and 25,000 franchisees cumulatively with one simple mission: to make local digital marketing feel authentic and activated. What does that mean in the context of multi-location marketing for 2026? Local marketing, what we're seeing suddenly didn't change, but it's been evolving very rapidly in the era of AI search. Most marketing teams definitely feel it, even if they can't put their finger around specifically on why. Simple things such as review response times, average rating, social media posting cadency, the ability to measure your local rank authority on search. These singles now carry substantially more weight into the logic of AI search authority and in the rapidly diminishing environment of paid ads and the ROI that's accomplished from there to acquire more leads and business for your franchisees. As many of you connecting here today are managing a magnitude of locations, whether you're an emerging brand with just the first 20 or you have 10, 11 brands under your portfolio and hundreds of locations, keeping everything steady and consistent is definitely not an easy task. And that's the problem Promo Republic resolves for their partners. This looks a little bit different for absolutely every single brand we do partner with. So if you do want to talk through, learn a little bit more how we could potentially help, scan the QR code, drop in the chat a little plus, and I'll reach out directly and we can have a chat. With that, 60 seconds of attention, back over to Brandy and let the panel begin.
Love that. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so again, we've got a QR code if you would like to learn more. And then we've got an agenda of 5 slides, 5 questions, and we'll be working at it through sort of a roundtable where we'll all be question and answer. If you have any thoughts or questions, pop them in the chat. And then at the end, we'll do a little Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started on the first question. All right. So the first question we're bringing to the table here is, what trends are most influencing how you're planning multi-location marketing for your business in 2026? You know, we're all entering this year with a lot of question marks and uncertainty. We've learned a lot last year. I know that we have. We've seen so much evolution in the digital space, and so really the question is, as we move into 2026, what trends are we looking at? What are we watching? What are we seeing? And then how are we using that to then move forward and plan our marketing for those of us who are in that multi-location space? So, Jessica, I'm going to toss this question to you first.
Sure. One of the things that I have come to realize is the power in tapping into very of the moment occasion. So in my previous role, I was leading marketing for a chain that was based in the Northeast. And I believe it was in 2024, there was an earthquake in New York City, which was very unusual. And we sent a push notification that day and said, "Did you feel that? So did we." And we offered a discount to our audience. And the way that our audience responded to that, they just felt like we were in on the joke. We did it in a way that really felt like we were really speaking to New Yorkers. And what I've since realized in moving into a role that spans national brands is that you can still act hyper local, even if you're leading marketing from a support center. This weekend was a great example. There were lots of brands that tapped into the cold weather in clever and of the moment ways. In our case, we offered a promotion on Thursday, encouraging people to grab a dozen bagels before they kind of hunker down for the weekend. But I saw lots of brands doing funny content on social, or I even got a push notification from a multi-location brand this weekend. So I wouldn't say there's any one trend. It's actually more so keeping your eyes and ears open to of the moment occasions that you can really connect with your audience in a way that breaks through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. I was going to say, I agree with that. Like it's really just realizing that not all locations need the same local strategy at the same time, but you can look at it from the seats that we sit in and figuring out what locations need what. And so looking at, what does that legacy store need versus what a newer store needs? So the legacy store needing that optimization and consistency, and the newer store needing that visibility and momentum. And so how do you leverage those trends in different ways for those different stores that need that difference of what, based on the maturity of that location. And then it's also just too, like, getting back to basics. I think that's something, it's like kind of like the opposite of trendy, but it is something that's happening. We've been preaching this for years, but we need to get our locations to lean into it. I hate that it's 2026 and we're still talking about the impacts of 2020, but we are. And so during that time, we all leaned so much into digital and the things that we could do because we couldn't get out and do all of the things from like a community perspective, that I think franchisees got away from those traditional local marketing strategies, and getting them to lean back into that has been an uphill battle, I think, for all brands. And we all know digital is so important, don't get me wrong, it's a huge piece of the puzzle, and even now today it encompasses so much more. I think when people say digital, they think just paid digital, or they think just social, or they think just your website, and not like that digital marketing is every single thing on the on the internet. But on top of that, we're putting a concentrated effort on really stressing the importance of being part of your community every day. And like, how do you be authentic? Like, whether it's online or in the community, like, people do business with people that they know and trust, not brands. So, obviously the brand's important. I wouldn't sit in the seat I sit in and say that the brand's not important. But our franchisees and their teams, they're the face of the brand in their communities, and they need to be ingrained in them. So I think that's something that's super important. And another thing that we're really leaning into is like, we need fewer initiatives done better. I think everybody knows franchisees are busy. Their attention is so fragmented. So if something is in the local playbook that we're giving them, it has to be worth their time and something that's actually going to move the needle, or they're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. Going back to the of the moment occasions, I have to say that in terms of the bagel space, you guys have it locked down for bad weather. I mean, the forever joke is go get your bread. So you guys have these perfect of the moment moments when the bad weather hits across the country. So I love that you guys took that and ran with it. Um, you know, and I thought it was really, really interesting when talking about splitting up the franchisees here, and saying and recognizing that we have mature franchisees and then we have new emerging franchisees, and whether for those of us who are in multi-brand spaces, we may be looking at it from a brand perspective, and then we're also looking at it from a franchisee perspective. So I really do think that that was a great point to understand that not all marketing plans and not all initiatives work for every office. And so I really did like that. And it was so funny that you said back to basics, Ashley, because that is exactly what I'm focusing here too with my team and throughout our brands. And so for me, my answer in terms of sort of what trends are influencing how we're planning, I pulled some data before we met here, and you know, a couple points I think that are important is right now we've got about 58% of U.S. searches end without a click. So when we have less click searches, we have to shift our plans. So I think these types of trends are really influencing how we're going to plan moving forward. And then we're also seeing a significant CTR drop when the AI overviews appear. So the
Mhm.
entrance of AI into our markets has really shifted how we have to look at things. Now, because of that, that's why I too have been looking at that back to basic concept also, because what happens is, or what has happened is, as AI has moved into the space, we've lost a lot of our traditional models for tracking and attribution. What used to work doesn't work anymore, and we have to change and shift. And so, really, the only way we can do that, I mean, even if we were at a space before where we had fully optimized our processes, which of course we haven't, but just in case we were, and then we were icing the cake with all of these incremental initiatives, right? How can we extract more? And then now we've sort of, the cake is now maybe a different flavor or a different shape. And so we really have to, because of all the new technology coming into play, we don't have a choice but to unice that cake a little bit and go back to those basics and make sure we've got the right amount of eggs and flour and water. So we're kind of doing the same thing in terms of dialing them back, because that incrementality of testing now is really hard to gather and capture fully, because the base foundation has changed with what we're doing. So
Mhm.
um, and to build upon this, so another quick question that I have for either of you is do you have sort of like a single biggest shift in your planning process compared to last year? Are you changing budget allocation? Are you adopting new technologies? What is that singular thing that you're seeing that is making you shift and that is influencing what you're doing for 2026?
I don't know that it's a singular shift, but it's kind of what you just said in like looking at things differently because of all the things that are changing based on the fact that search and happening without a click and all of those AI, searches, and how do you show up there? Because that's what people are looking at. They're not going, and it's not about
They
just
are.
showing up above the fold and then getting them to click on it. It's how are you showing up in that AI overview? That's the $1 million question. And no one knows the right answer. Like we all, can make our
Yes.
assumptions, and we know some of the things to do to, that we think and are being told will help get you into that space, but we don't even know for sure if those are the things, like I'd be lying if I said for sure that I know that those things are helping. Like I know that, everyone's telling me, well, the better that your reviews are and the more that you have your website built to be conversational. And maybe if you can get some things on Reddit because the LLM, scan Reddit, and maybe if you can get
Yes.
on Wikipedia, and
Yes.
maybe if you can do this, and maybe if you can do that. So we're doing those things, but is that
Yeah.
helping? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, because we used to have algorithm changes within Google, and we would be able to know when they were coming, or there are tools that could track, and they'd see a whole lot of uncertainty. And we might get a major algorithm shift a couple times a year, and then a big one every year or two. And now we're just getting these constant shifts. So, like you mentioned, Reddit as a vehicle to show up in LLM overviews, maybe it works today, but these models can change. They're constantly iterating, so next week that might not work anymore. And so
Right.
we're just in this constant motion of movement. Something that I saw as I was something that was mentioned to me at one point too, and how this ties into franchising, is that we're seeing, somebody mentioned how the professional franchisee class is growing, right? Our multi-unit operators are demanding more sophisticated tech stacks, data access. And so for us, that's also part of our, if I were to say one singular shift in our planning process, it's really focused on technology, because we are seeing that concept of that professional franchisee that really, really is following the technology and wanting us to be on the forefront of it too.
Yeah, I would add to that. I feel that the restaurant industry has really been forced to evolve into an e-commerce business with COVID
Mm,
really accelerating technology. And so we went from being an industry that was just very much focused on giving a best-in-class in-store experience. And now operators are being forced to think about all these different things, my tech stack, my integration, and my loyalty, and my POS,
yes,
and my back of house systems. And it's
yes,
really force brands to have to look at, do we have the right people in the right seats to support this ever evolving tech stack. And to build on your question, in the face of all this change, actually, one of the things that we're leaning on from a local store marketing perspective is direct mail. And so we're going back to basics. So that's kind of a really tried and true old school tactic that still is a great mechanism for driving awareness in a new market and instigating some traffic into bakery. So we're continuing to adapt to the algorithm, but also relying on some good old fashioned tactics that still work.
That is a really good point, right? We can't lose sight of what we know, the foundational marketing aspects that we know and trust. They still, you're right, they still work. And I do think that sometimes we spend so much time in the digital space, myself, of course, because that's sort of where I'm at. That we do sometimes leave aside those traditional aspects. So that's a really good point. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let's move on to the next question. So, our second question here is, how is the definition of local presence changing for big brands? I mean, we all know that local presence is no longer just NAP, consistency, name, address, phone, which is, I think, for the last decade, that's how we have really defined local presence. So, how do you see local presence changing and shifting as technology and time evolves? Jessica, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Well, it's interesting because across big brands, we've seen kind of a combination of approaches. There are major national brands that play a really great local game, and then others that choose to really just focus on a national approach. And so I think for most brands, you have to decide. It'd be hard to do both really well. And as a brand that is choosing to play more of a system approach, then we have to think really intentionally about how do we build a repeatable toolkit that works for operators at the local level. And it really does come down to working with operators and making sure that we understand their local community, because one size is not going to fit all. Of course, some locations are college, some are families, some are office. And so it is this ability to kind of scale between creating a system that's going to drive national awareness, but also giving operators a flexible toolkit so that they can be nimble and create moments that are going to help them to build community right in their own backyards.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the data points that I had pulled was that localized content receives 12 times the engagement of non-localized content. And I absolutely do believe that. We all see that day to day. But how strong can localized content perform if we don't already have brand awareness? So we
Mhm.
can't leave that out of the way. If we have set brand awareness aside and we're only looking at local content, we're missing a lot of the citation worthy AI appearances. We're missing the multiple touch points on the actual consumer who need to be primed a little bit by understanding and being aware of our brand before that local marketing really hits them and takes off and then sends their feet into the door. So I think everything you're saying is just so spot on. Ashley, I'd love to get your input on this question.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's what does that mix look like? Because there has to be that mix of like, what is the brand content and the brand awareness and all of that look like with the mix of the local, and where are you putting those things? So, like, what things are going to be the brand channels, and then what things are going to be the mix of the brand and local, and what makes sense? And then you go back to what can the franchisees and their teams handle and what can they not handle? Because, we have a lot of franchisees who will come to us and say, we need to have a local TikTok account. Do you?
Mm. Yeah,
Because
great. Yes.
there's a
A
couple
lot of
things.
work.
Yeah, that's great that you think you need a local TikTok account. However, you have a local Facebook account, and I don't think you've ever posted on it. So, like, you don't have
Yeah.
the time to post on that. A TikTok account is a heck of a lot more time, because creating TikTok content is harder than posting a picture on Facebook. And so, like, it's figuring out, like, and really showing them, like, I understand, like, that you want that, but there's a reason that we have a brand one, because we know how much work it is, and we know you don't have the time. Like, it's not even from a, trust perspective. It's, you don't have the time to do that. And you might think you have the time now because it sounds fun and cool. And for 2 weeks, you're going to have the time to do it, and then it's going to drop off, and then it just becomes a dead channel. And so the way that we kind of balance that is that we try to collect that stuff to make our brand channels have that local feel. So we give our locations because we want that true organic content too, because Brandy, to your point, that stuff performs better. That's going to perform better than if I go out and do a professional photo shoot. Like, yes, I want to have those professional, great looking photos and things like that, but I also want it to look real. And so we open up and we ask all of our locations, we have a channel that they can send us stuff. And those are the people that are in the restaurants. They're going to be better at creating that than I am. Like, I'm not going to, no one wants me creating a TikTok video. Like, let's be honest. Like, that's not what no one wants me doing that. I don't even have a personal TikTok account. I only have it to follow our brand one.
Yeah. And that's that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's sort of how I mentioned above that the professional franchisee class of wanting to use and be more integrated in technology, but that also intersects in a troublesome way sometimes with shiny object syndrome. So I think it's definitely us at corporate, working for the franchisor to really be those guides and stewards to the franchisees to help them navigate all of this new technology that's coming this way. And your TikTok was a perfect example.
Yeah. So like we open up to like the locations, like create that, if you have somebody on your team that's great at creating that TikTok content, cool, use CapCut, use whatever, send it to us. And then we can post it on our brand channel. And then we have that local feel and that organic feel. You get what you want in that. We put it on our brand channel. So we get that feel still without then putting it on them to have to create, 4 to 5 pieces of content a week that they're never going to be able to maintain. And so that's kind of how we have that balance. And then also showing them that like, we don't have to be there to be there. We work with influencers. You have an influencer go to your location and they're posting about you and they're talking about how they're in Manassas, Virginia. So then you get that local talk, they're talking about your location specifically. Then you're on TikTok and you're on Instagram and you're in all these places and you didn't have to do anything. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to be there and do the work to be there.
Yeah. Jessica, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I think sometimes operators might hear influencer and they think, oh, they've got to have 100,000 followers. They don't. There's a lot of power in working with micro and nanos. If you can find those folks that really do even 2,000, 5,000 followers, but their audience is like Cincinnati foodies, that's a really worthy account because the people that are following that account are interested in what's new and up and coming in my community. And I think the other thing that's great about what Ashley said is if you build content that feels localized but are using it on national channels or system-wide channels, you can also boost it around that geography if depending on what your menu mix is, if we're talking about franchise or not. But if you want to support kind of a key market and show that local face, it does create community. I've seen it firsthand where consumers come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw you on TikTok. Like there's something exciting about the person serving you. Also seeing them on social, and you'll see it show up in the comments of people that go to that location saying like, oh, he's the best. And so I think I think that's a perfect strategy of how to rechannel that really well-intentioned energy into a scalable support system for social.
And that also, to your point, you're the person that's in that TikTok or Instagram or whatever, they see themselves and then they're going to share it with their local, they're on their channels. And because they think it's cool that they're on the brand TikTok and then that shares it with their people too. So that also gives it that local reach. Granted, they're probably not have thousands of followers, but it still gives more people and more eyes in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. This is all excellent talking points. With that, let's move to the next question. So the next question is where we start digging into AI here specifically. So the question here is, how do you see AI influencing local marketing decisions in 2026? So Ashley, I'll start with you here.
I mean, I feel like we've already been kind of talking about this.
We have a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's already influencing our decisions. At this point, it's just table stakes. It's not something that, we can get away from. Where I get excited about it and also overwhelmed by it is that it's not even about creating content faster. I think that's what people think about a lot when they think about AI. It's really about helping us decide like where to focus. So like what promotions are actually working in certain markets, what channels are oversaturated, Where should a franchisee spend their dollars in that market? Really just helping us understand things a little bit more. And I really think it's about using AI to be more strategic. I think a lot of people, when they think about like AI and specifically like the large language models, that they're using it more like a search engine, like they're using it and asking it questions like they would ask Google something. And that's definitely, in my opinion, not the way to use it right. Um, People need to learn how to use it as more of like a strategic thought partner. And that takes time to refine. You know, I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I said that earlier. I think I'm doing the right things in some ways, and maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But really using it to help you narrow down what, you know, you might have a thought and helping it refine your thoughts and using it to get to a place that helps you make a strategic decision instead of just saying, what should I be doing in XYZ market? Like, because you can ask Google that and it's not going
Yeah,
to give you a good answer.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I personally like to look at AI as our co-pilot, not as a
Yeah.
replacement.
Yep.
You know, if the best space in my mind for us to use AI right now is to handle is first off to handle the repetitive tasks that we do for local marketing, so we can focus on the service, the relationships, the local content creation, the things that AI can't replace. And then also, like you said, you know, using those predictive models to guide budget allocation, channel selection based upon both local demands and past performance. We're working with and building with a variety of internal tools that help us to, you know, do those things to help us allocate that budget, to help us understand the market saturation, and better guide our franchisees on spend when they come to us looking for that type of advice. And then I think the other layer too that we're seeing that's really taken a lot of work off of, you know, our team's shoulders, at least in our case, and for our franchisees, is the review response tools. Review responding used to be a really, really big chore for franchisees. Um, and now with the integration of AI into review responding tools, that and we actually do work with Promo Republic at Threshold for this. And one of the things that we worked with them was to put the guardrails on, and the brand consistency and the brand voice. So now we're able to either help the franchisees directly by doing it, or we're able to guide the franchisees on how to do it themselves in so much quicker, in such a shorter time span, because they are answering and then they're also staying on brand. So they're able to be personable, but they're also staying on brand, which is something that historically we were never able to get them to stay on brand with review responses specifically. So that's another way that we're really seeing AI help. Jessica, thoughts?
Oh, yeah, so many thoughts. I mean, the use cases for AI are endless, and they're two little letters that you can hear so overused, and there's so much context loaded behind them. And so, to Ashley's point, I think one, from a consumer standpoint, we do have to face the reality that SEO and GEO are now evolving. And so, what used to be optimizing towards a Google search like lunch near me, maybe now our audiences are saying, hey, I need to cater to 30 people. Help me to analyze all of the different restaurants within a 10-mile radius and make the best recommendation on a cost per head count, right? So that's a much more robust question that they can ask an LLM. And do we have the right content that is going to train the LLMs to surface us as a viable option? So there's a lot more work to be done there and really understanding how to make your brand stand out in this new GEO environment. And then to your other points about the way that we can use it to just be smarter, faster, more informed, I mean, there's a number of tools out there, Promo Republic included, that can help operators just do more with less. And I think that, the reviews is a great example and use case. I mean, if there is anybody who's listening that hasn't yet experimented and is still nervous about it, even doing something as simple as drop all your Google reviews into an LLM and just say, help me to understand what you think are the themes about why I can't get past a 4.2 average rating on Google. I think that's a great place to start. Or, log into your loyalty program and download the verbatims and drop it into an LLM and glean some insights around what could I learn from my loyalty customer. So if you're still on the fence, or if you're still only using it to ask simple questions, I would challenge the audience to just carve out time each week and start experimenting with it. And it only makes you realize how much you could be really optimizing your workflows with the benefit of AI.
I actually really love that point. If there are folks here listening who maybe dabbled their toes in it in the fall or in the summer, the models have changed so rapidly. And if we just look back a year ago, if we just look back 6 months ago, the capabilities of all of the LLMs and the advancement of the models blows each previous one out of the water. So whereas, 6 months ago we could feed it a spreadsheet and it would hallucinate answers, these days, when we feed it a spreadsheet, generally speaking, it's pretty much sticking with the data that we gave it, and it's less prone to hallucination. So I think that's really really great advice. If maybe you tried it at some point and you thought this is terrible, give it another shot. I wanted to. I just wanted to bring up when you were talking about the queries and how the queries, we used to talk about long tail queries in SEO. And then now that what was a long tail query is now like this crazy specific query that we likely can't even comprehend what it might be. And then there's actually another layer, which is the fan out queries, because the AI understands that. And we always had people also ask, so we could track what are the queries, what are the people also ask that then Google is kind of suggesting. And then now we have the ask, which is a very long ask, a very long answer, and then the fan out queries, which are a whole bunch of other questions that the AI has asked the user if they would then like to ask. So, which are also longer or more complex. So now we sort of have, instead of what we used to have as this funnel and this sort of predictable query string, we're just on a roller coaster now. And it's kind of cool because it gives us a lot more opportunity than we had
Sure.
before. But it's also not as cool because sometimes it just feels like we're swimming in an ocean versus, just a background pool. Um,
Mm.
you know, um, a
But
really quick
luckily, we all feel
question.
that way together. Like, so for everybody
Yes.
listening, just like if you feel overwhelmed, know that everybody does. I think that it's important to
Yes.
say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really, really, really quick one that I wanted to toss in here that I thought would be really fun to ask was two questions. And one is, where have you seen the most immediate ROI? And then two, where are you skeptical in terms of using AI to make your decision? So let's answer these really quick so that we can move on to the next one. But I'm super curious. Jessica, I'm going to ask you first.
Big fan of using it for market research, just evolving away from static NPS questions to leveraging LLMs to ask questions to guests that help you to get really behind the why. Have seen a lot of success with that. Skeptical, less so on the decision making, but more so on creative. I think we're still early days
Mm,
of being able to rapidly create AI generated creative that is of high quality, high fidelity. Just and I'm sure let's have this conversation in 6 months and see if I still feel that way, but haven't quite seen that come to fruition yet.
Yeah.
got to agree with you on that. At least with Nano Banana coming out, that really stepped the game up a ton
Yeah.
to use for creative. But outside of Nano Banana, and even still, it's definitely not something that we can solidly lean on. Ashley, quick question for
Um,
you.
yeah, I would agree on the research side. It has definitely helped get better information faster, things that would take so much time of going and looking at, competitive data and pricing and menus and things like that helps us get that information much easier to validate, have that information and then have to validate instead of having to find it, validate it, do all the things. So much time saving there. So that right there is just, definite ROI. And then as far as skeptical, it's the way that people are using it. I think that a lot of people think that they're just going to be able to go in and use it, and then the output that they get is not good. So going back to your point, Brandy, of like, if you've used it for, before and you thought it was bad, maybe you used it before and thought it was bad because you weren't using it right. And I see a lot of people doing that, where like even, I've seen people use it and send an email and I'm like, you clearly just put something into ChatGPT and sent this. And I can tell if I can tell that you did it with an LLM, you didn't use it right. And I think a lot of people are doing that. So that's where I'm skeptical, is that people aren't using it right. And we're going to be a lot of stuff out there that you can just really tell, and it's not good information.
The slop.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd say my answer here is my immediate ROI is truly the availability to code and build software quickly. I have a background in computer science, so for me, it's just it's something that I haven't really done because I've been in the marketing space. And so using Power BI and other reporting tools, now I'm able to just build something really quick, plug in a pile of APIs, and let AI do all of the analysis, especially when we're trying to dig out for outliers or patterns or that sort of thing. I was just talking to one of my content managers, and we're looking at how can we push forward written content out faster. And it was just so cool to say, hey, you know what, give me what you think you would need for an intake form. I can plug in a variety of APIs. Let's build this out. We can have it done by the end of the week, and then we can just increase the speed of content creation for SEO. So it's kind of cool to be able to just say, hey, we can do this by Friday. So that is by far the most immediate ROI. And I guess that would really just be efficiency and data analysis. And then where I'm still skeptical is trusting a basic, simple query. If you ask it a really vague, broad question, it's going to give you some maybe outdated or broad answers. You've got to really be specific, and you've really got to understand the query prompting process to get the answer out that you are really looking for. So anybody listening here who really wants to dig further into using the LLMs and maybe hasn't, do some research on query development. It's really, really important to get the right query in there. If you're weak on the questions that you're asking and the ways that you're using it, you should be skeptical on the answers that it's giving you. So just a little note there. So with that, we're going to move to Q4. So our fourth question is, what does design for scale mean in your 2026 plans? Jessica, let's start with you.
It means testing first and then scaling. And again, when we think about local, it's not going to be one size fits all, but we've been intentional about testing out different levers and then scaling from there. So example being, I think lead generation when opening a new market is a great example, but you can A/B test. Should we offer a free egg sandwich or should we offer a buy one, get one? We've experimented with grand opening events. What's the right timing? What's the right mechanism? Thinking about different partnerships, whether it's with a university or with a hospital. So it's really about just testing through what works, failing fast, and then sharing those results and providing toolkits that operators can leverage successfully on their own.
Yeah, awesome. Ashley?
Yeah, agree with that 100%. Definitely have to test things. And I think that it's also just like simply put, can it be executed consistently by a busy operator with limited time and varying levels of expertise and confidence in their abilities? That's how it scales. Because if those things aren't in place, if it requires too much explanation, too many steps, or too much guesswork, they're not going to do it, and it's not going to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Franchisees are busy. And a lot of times for me, when it comes to choosing a tool, it may even come down to how many times does somebody have to log into something? Because there are just barriers, and how do we remove the barriers? So for me, I always look at in terms of scaling, if we're talking about franchisee adoption, we really need to look at what are the barriers from A to B. So if we really want to put this into place, how quickly and easily can we roll this down to franchisees? For us, I'd say for 2026, the design for scale means leveraging AI technologies, leveraging our technology team, and we're using that to sort of bring in consistency, speed, decision quality, and building out our tech stack. We're really, really, really focused on our tech stack for 2026, and using AI in the ways that we can best do it, and then scaling across all of our brands and down to our franchisees. And that allows us to just iterate, fail quickly, see what works, see what doesn't, and eliminate barriers, the more things that we can consolidate, and the more things that we are able to bubble up visibility to the franchisees in terms of marketing attribution, what services have they signed up for, what are they doing, the more we can put in front of them with less barriers, then the easier we'll be able to scale. And then also when it comes to testing, the more we can scale, the more adoption we have, the more we're able to understand what works and what doesn't. And so with that, let's jump into the next question, our last question of the day, which is, what advice would you give to teams planning local marketing for the next phase? And Ashley, I'll let you start on this one.
I think the biggest thing is I think a lot of times people look at local marketing last. It's that you look at what you look at national, you look at brand awareness, you look at all of those things. And then the very last thing that people look at is local marketing. And so local marketing kind of becomes like a nice to have. And it's really the opposite. Like that is the thing that is going to make a location successful. You can do all the national campaigns, you can do all the brand awareness, you can do everything that is possible from the seat that you sit in as the franchisor or the corporate team or whatever you call yourself, depending on if you're franchise, corporate, whatever. You can do that, but if you don't have that day-to-day local presence in the community, whether that's online, boots on the ground, all of those pieces together, that location is not going to be successful. They're just not. And so looking at that last is the opposite way to look at it. So yes, you need to have all those other pieces like we were talking about earlier. If you don't have the brand awareness, the local content isn't going to go anywhere. But looking at local last is a huge myth that I think most people do, because they're like, oh, we have to have all this stuff first. Yes, you have to have that, but they have to work in tandem. And if you look at local marketing as just like, if it happens, it happens, all this other stuff will make the engine run. It won't, because that location is going to struggle. If you look at those ones that aren't doing local marketing, I guarantee you those are your lowest performing locations. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then ultimately looking at like measuring what matters. If you're doing something just to do it, like if it's not driving traffic or sales, question why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to throw in a fact real quick that I had written down here, which is that that 94%, this comes from Bright Local, 94% of high performing brands have a dedicated local marketing strategy versus 60% of average performers. So what you're saying really, really resonates. The brands that are performing well have a very dedicated local marketing strategy and aren't only looking at it from the corporate and brand perspective. And they're not leaving that, outside on the front porch. They're bringing it in the house and making it part of their strategy. And so the data really confirms that. So Jessica, your thoughts on this?
I would add to that, it's a mistake to approach local marketing from a top-down perspective. And so really challenge yourself if you're at a corporate or support level team to spend time with the folks that are living and breathing your brand day in and day out. And that might mean actually going out and spending time working in a restaurant or, conducting a roundtable. And even if you can't do that, get your operators on a call and seek input around what's been successful. To Ashley's point, who are the drivers and the drags? Spend time with the drivers and figure out what's working for them and how can you scale that, socialize that, create standard operating procedures that others can pull from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to build upon that, both of your answers, my advice that I would give are probably two things. So one of them is sort of what you said, like, let's not forget that grassroots still works. We talked about back to the basics. We talked about not forgetting local marketing at the door. And, franchisees, we see this all of the time. Franchisees who are participating in community events, partnerships, online forums, really nailing their Google business listings and replying to those reviews and getting the reviews, capturing the reviews. They tend to be the top performers. I know some of our best performers are franchisees who have themselves or managers active in their local Facebook Facebook groups. So,
Mhm.
these boost the AI visibility even through mentions, engagement, and any other ways. So, I think we can't forget that the grassroots efforts still work, and they build into the all of the technology that we're seeing. And then I also think that we have to go back to really thinking about that mid funnel. I know we talked about TikTok earlier, but that really is another space. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, that local content. Folks are just devouring video content today,
Yeah.
and all of our AI tools that we're seeing are also understanding it, reading it, absorbing it, leveling it up in queries. So it's not always easy to get on the ground, but at least we can. Something that we're working at Threshold is training our franchisees on how to do it with, not a lot of time, not a lot of money,
Yeah.
not a lot of investment, but having those, like you talked about, the roundtables or town halls that say, guys, this is actually pretty easy to do. We don't need perfection. We don't need a fancy camera. We just need a tripod, a cell phone, a $20 mic, and here's how you can order it at Amazon.
Mhm.
And so, let's that mid funnel, when folks are really trying to understand what option to go with and think about who they should use. That's where you can really get in front of folks with video content, and impress them with your magic and your localization.
Yeah, I
So
would add to that, your
yeah.
Facebook example is a good example. If there's an operator out there that's just good at that. I mean, we found someone who had really found success with finding local parenting groups or, foodie
Yep.
groups and getting into those into those virtual communities and sharing content. And then when you start to ask others, why haven't you? And you realize maybe they're not as comfortable on social. Well, that's a great opportunity to leverage that operator who does know how to do it and let them hear from their peer set too. Here's how I do it. And sometimes it's as simple as like just the basics of here's how to search for local Facebook groups. Make sure your profile picture is X, here's a suite of visuals that you can post in those communities. Like sometimes just like breaking it down because sometimes people just don't know where to start, and leveraging people just like them in their network to help share that as opposed to, me from the support center. There's a lot of value in them hearing it from operators that are in the same seat as them and having that success.
That is exactly what I was going to follow up with too. So you beat me to the punch. We have historically, so we had one franchisee who just did amazing in the local groups, and so we had a brand town hall, a community meeting, where all of the franchisees are usually on quarterly or monthly, and we brought that franchisee on to have part of the town hall for her to talk about how she does it, how she trains her managers to do it, what success she's seen, what kind of ROI she has. And it really, really was so much more impactful than myself or somebody else on my team or anybody else up here at corporate and the support
Mhm.
staff to tell them how well we're seeing that this is really working for this franchisee. No, get that franchisee, on that town hall talking to their peers and show them how they're
Yeah.
impacting their business that way. And so that was great advice because I was going to give the same. Um, so this has been really awesome. I really thank the both of you and Promo Republic for hosting these CMO peer talks. I always walk away learning something new that I didn't know before I entered, or a new way to look at things. So I really appreciate this. Now we've just got a few minutes left, so if there is any Q&A, let's go ahead and tackle that now.
We answered all the questions, guys.
I think we did. I think we did. I'm going to answer. I'm going to ask a question then with our few minutes left. The ultimate question that we hear all the time is SEO dead with AI overviews. What do you think?
No, it's never going to be. It's going to be a part of it. It's just going to change, right? It's going to change and continue to evolve, and we're never going to know exactly what to do, like I said earlier. But we're going to try to figure it out as we go.
And
So we have a question from Ricardo, which is, what is the best way to gain traction for a new franchisee page, Instagram and Facebook? Awesome question.
Commenting.
Jessica or Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say if you're trying to gain traction, I would find other pages that are local to that location and engage with folks in those comments. Because if they're following a neighboring business, chances are they're in that community and could be a fan of yours. So just you've got to kind of build that through putting yourself out there by commenting on other people's content or following folks that appear to be local to your community. So it just takes a little bit of community engagement time.
I agree with that and would add that local franchisee or their team to like use their personal network as well. Invite people to like the page and share it and all of those things.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
they're the face of the brand. So they need to be comfortable with that and lean into that and use that network as well.
Yeah, local BNI groups, those are also really helpful because then you can build local partnerships with other businesses where you can like and comment on each other's and really support each other as local companies within your area, and also have partnerships too. Another question that we got here is, let's see, for us, it's challenging to get franchisees involved in local initiatives. What would be the best way to incentivize them to get involved? And that's a really, really good question. Any thoughts or ideas?
I'm not above
Yeah.
bribery. I will admit that. So
Contests.
yes.
That's our thing.
Yep. Contests and get people love to be number one and compete. And so different contests to see, putting numbers out there of who's doing the best. People want to be the best, sharing those things. And then also I will a lot of times incentivize people with stuff from the brand fund. So if you do X, then I will invest more in your market for a certain period of time from the brand fund. A lot of times the easiest way to do that is to give them more money to spend on like their digital programs, because that's something that's easily manageable to give them. But that's something that I've done in the past.
Yeah, and also cost sharing is another way you can do it. For these specific types of initiatives that we know really do work, we'll put in a third of the cost from the brand fund, right? That's another way we could do it, is we can cost share, so that they feel, whether it's purchasing a booth in a particular event, but so cost sharing is definitely one way. And then, yeah, like Alex said, layers of gamification. I was going to say another thing to do is to find franchisees who are really nailing local events. This is something that we just did this year. We have one franchisee who is really has gotten involved in local initiatives. She created like a spinning wheel thing that has prizes when she sets up at local fairs and festivals and community events. And then she can also really track back the leads that she got from that. So we had her on a town hall to talk to the other franchisees about really what the ROI is on that. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes money, but not a lot. And the ROI in a lot of cases is stronger than paid advertising, things that folks would really quickly do. So, just again, learning from their fellow franchisees and highlighting and putting the spotlight on the ones who are doing those things that work, and to show the other franchisees, guys, this really, really does work. We've got another question. What do you feel is the best channel to reach those local audiences where they'll 100% see it in those moments when we talked about the of the moment occasions? They said SMS. What channels are you finding success for those of the moment moments with our 3 minutes left?
Yeah, if you do have an SMS program, it's definitely a great tool. If you have an app, a push notification is another alternative to that. But I would also say email and social are great ways. So I think it's just finding that appropriate mix between those kind of four primary channels.
Any thoughts, Ashley?
Yeah. I agree. And I think it depends on what the moment is.
Mhm.
So sometimes those moments are like a social moment. So it's something that's happening. So for example, in the last couple of weeks, we've all probably seen the moment on Instagram that's talking about 2016. That's something
Mhm.
you would do on
Yes.
Instagram because everyone's talking about it on Instagram. Probably wouldn't make a lot of sense if you sent an email about 2016. So figuring out what the moment is and putting it where that moment's happening.
Right.
Love that. Yeah. And if the moment could require an offer, or could an offer would sweeten up that moment too, that's where you can tag that along and use email and use text and that kinds of thing. So I love that advice of where the moment is and what the moment is about, and then matching that to the platform. And then thinking about other ways, sitting down, using your brain, getting creative and saying, how can we take it and spin it off to other platforms where it makes sense? So
Mhm.
I love this. This is a great space for us to end. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jessica. This has been an excellent session with CMO Peer Talks. Thank you, Promo Republic and Alex, again for giving us this space. And I love this. I love these learning sessions. And thanks for everybody who came to listen to us and share your knowledge and questions with us. So I look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank
Have a
you.
Thank you
great
so much.
afternoon and stay warm.